Yo! Welcome back to Cast and Commons, guys. This is the show where we talk and discuss all things Pauper. I am your host, Teasdale, and this is my co-host, Uncle Istvan Reese.
Hello.
Hello. That's a very, very deep metaphor, honest. So, pal, what have you been up to? Let's just go, what have you been up to this week, to be honest, because I haven't really spoke to you that much, so...
Yeah, not a huge amount. I have played a bit of Magic. There was there was a club open on Wednesdays as well, so there was a few of us down. I think only 4 people down to play some Magic there. So I played some Legacy, which I haven't played in a long time, and then I tested some Grixis Finny, with. It wasn't a list I'd seen. I just sort of jammed some of the new cards in and was like, well, we'll see how they are. Tithe and Blade, very good. I also tried the new Deadly Dispute. I can't remember what it's called. The Meta Map token.
I think it's Fanatical Offering or something like that.
Yeah,
Something along
that
those lines.
That was fine, but I don't know. I don't know if the loss of the life gain from the Reckoner's Bargain that it replaced sort of was worth the sort of artifact that it's an artifact, but it doesn't really do much. Like, I think I threw one with the munitions and like it made my Marine Forces cost less. Basically, it was fine. It didn't blow my socks off. It's not a new Deadly Dispute.
No,
competitor, put it that way. It's more of a. It might be better than Bargain. It might not.
I think you're probably in an open meta game where you 90% of the time you're not aiming to fight against red or some sort of aggressive deck. I'd say it potentially is like you might as well have it because it's an artifact.
True.
But as soon as you consider maybe 1 or 2 pilots in your local game store like having red, you just might as well go to bargaining because it doesn't gain you that much. It's no treasure by any stretch.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, the deck felt really strong. I was quite impressed by the sort of new layout of Grixis, and obviously Tithe and Blade is a really strong addition to that deck. That felt great. That card. Yeah. To be able to cast a removal spell and then like just Deadly Dispute away my removal spell, or my removal spell also pays for Marine Forces. Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So that was Wednesday, and then obviously we had FNM on Friday, which was modern again. Unfortunately not Pauper. I played Burn for that one, Boros Burn, which again it's just a super consistent, super strong deck. Ended up going 3-0 fairly easily with that. It just sort of runs through everyone unless they've got Ley Lines of Sanctity. But yeah, that's about it Magic wise. I am starting to update some of our decks now with the Ixalan cards. In preparation because next month is basically all Pauper FNMs for us. So I'll probably play a different deck each week and give a new Ixalan card a go.
Yeah, you might as well. To be fair, strong one.
What about yourself? I think you've got more crack than I do.
Yeah, I'd say this is probably the least amount of Pauper I've played in a very, very long time. So yeah, please do forgive me. Literally, as we finished up recording last Tuesday, about 6 hours later, I was in the hospital, obviously, with the wife went into labour. So about 36 hours later on the Thursday, my newborn son was born. So, yeah, busy week and haven't really slept since, basically. But I got to the point, I think on Thursday, what did I do? On Thursday, he was born, and then Friday, she got put into a ward, so you basically go from 24 hours you can be with them to, hey, you're in visiting hours, so I had to go home on the Friday, basically. So, like, the first thing I did, it was, like, 11:45, like, just about to go to Saturday morning, I was like, I opened Magic Online and bought all the Ixalan cards, I was like, that'll do. In preparation, wang together some sort of Mardu synth deck, and then Saturday morning before visiting hours opened, I jammed like 2 games or something with Tithe and Blade. So that's about literally as much Pauper I've done. I did check out the event Paupergeddon on Twitch on the weekend because we came home on the Saturday. So once you're not feeding them, they're sleeping. I just sat there watching them. Even to be fair, I just had him in my arms and just like I'm watching Twitch on my phone. And it's like, so this is Gardens and this is how. So yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much it really. Very sleep deprived, so I will try and be as upbeat as possible, but we're all good. But yeah, it was mainly, apart from playing about 2 games of Magic on Mardu Synth, testing Tithe and Blade, as you said, Cardis House.
Yeah, it seems like a big addition for that deck as well. Just being able to reuse it with Glinthawks and Core Skyfishes seems pretty bust.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely different ways you can build it, for sure, and we'll definitely go into, maybe not necessarily Mardu, but some sort of shells you can kind of adapt to Mardu, potentially. But it was definitely a good card, good addition, and a great event to watch. And I was definitely that. I don't know if you've seen any of Paupergeddon, but that final game went to game 3, Gardens versus this Jeskai Glitters, as we'll touch on. Oh my god, it was literally to the wire. Yeah, it was great. It was like a proper back and forth. I'll dive right into it when we touch on. Obviously, for those who haven't realised, we will be touching on the Paupergeddon results. And I'll touch on that last game because it was great to watch. But yeah, let's move on to a bit of news. The only news we've got, apart from obviously welcoming my amazing son to the world, is the tournament news that Recollect on the 10th of December will be hosting a Pauper event. It is a £250 prize pool. It is in Chester. Recollect have obviously supported West Coast Gamers, our local game store, quite a lot. They've been up to be vendors and, even provided they provided like a SNES or something last time. You just sit there and play the SNES last time they're up from memory.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I believe there are, is it 32 you reckon now? Or is it gone down? Is it 32 places in total or?
Yeah, it's capped at 32.
Capped at 32. So obviously, if you are considering going, just check, see how many places there is, and obviously check on the website. The website and the event page is in the description of this podcast below. So check that out. Obviously, Reese will be attending. This way, I guess. Reese will be attending and representing Casting Commons.
I'll have to remember to put my t-shirt on.
Yeah. Get the rep going. But yeah, anyways, let's dive right in and dive in all the events. There is 3 events to cover: the Saturday challenge, the Sunday challenge, and of course, Paupergeddon Rome.
So
start with Saturday.
Saturday challenge. Saturday the 18th of November. First place was Blue Black Fair. Second place was Grixis Affinity. Third and fourth were a pair of red decks, one Sticker Red and one Kuldotha. And then 5th through 8th was Flickertron, Black White Glitters, Blue Black Control, and Mono Red 1-drops. And then the 2 near misses was a Boros Initiative and a Core Gates. I think the first thing that stands out to me is it's another super varied top 10. There's 8 obviously distinct decks, but even the 3 mono red decks in there, they're all pretty different mono red decks. Obviously 1-drops doesn't run anything that costs more than 1, so there's no impulses in there. And then the Sticker Red is obviously utilising Sticker Goblin, and Kuldotha is just sort of the old school Kuldotha that we're used to. And given the introduction now of Goblin Tomb Raider, a boost in red decks was about to happen because they've essentially just downshifted Goblin Guide to common. Obviously, all 3 of those decks are playing Goblin Tomb Raider. So yeah, it seems to have already found a decent foothold in the format. Another thing that I noted was the Black White Glitters deck. It's quite cool to see a new variant on Glitters. Obviously, when Glitters came out, we had like Jeskai and Esper, and then it sort of solidified as Blue White. But now they've got Tithe and Blade as a pretty useful tool. The Black White shell seems pretty strong, to be fair.
Yeah, I really like this list from Mog, to be fair. Obviously, utilising Core Skyfish and Glinthawk, as we touched on.
Yeah.
And it is essentially sort of like a slower, very much like reminds me of the Esper Glitters. Obviously, a lot slower, doesn't have to go as aggressive as Blue White Glitters does. But you've obviously got that removal spell engine, and you've also got the the draw package of obviously Deadly Dispute, along with the usual suspects. Obviously, Mare Enforcer and Thraben are just really good.
Mm.
You do obviously lose. I think Metallic Rebuke's obviously the biggest loss I would say for this deck, but you do also have
Yeah, Thoughtcast as well is a pretty big one.
But obviously you've got Blood Fountain and Ica Wellspring as well for like some sort of at least to keep the engine going, but is a lot slower with obviously Core Skyfisher.
Yeah, I think slowing it down obviously makes the Ica Wellspring Deadly Dispute engine seem a lot more appealing. Obviously, the blue white versions and even the Esper versions to some extent couldn't really utilize that engine very well. But now you've got the grind, like you've got the Titan blades to just grind out your opponents, like Glint Hawking it and playing it again and again and again. And you've got now a solid card draw, like mid-range card draw engine with Ica Wellsprings and Deadly Disputes, or Ica Wellsprings and Glint Hawks and Skyfishers. You can just power into the late game, just hold your glitters in hand. You don't have to go for it if you don't need to, and then just deploy them when you can, and it'll be lethal probably.
Definitely. But yeah, also utilizing Glinthawk and Core Skyfisher with all that glitters as well is great. Like obviously having a flying threat as Ornithopter's shown for blue white glitters. Get like decks like obviously another flying threat is just great. Even not putting a glitters on, just having an army of 2/2s or 2/3s is strong enough. It's a strong enough plan B if glitters or Mare Enforcer doesn't work.
Yeah, I guess as well with the Skyfisher, you can always just play a glitters, hit, and then play your Skyfisher to pick the glitters back up if you're scared of like sorcery speed removal, or if they're tapped out for that turn, you're like, oh well, I can get 12 damage in, but it's not lethal. You can just glitters attack and then pick it back up with the Skyfisher to sort of protect it from removal.
There is one thing that I do, especially once we've touched on obviously the top 8 of the Paupergeddon, like I could easily see a black-white deck here splashing red very easily for Galv Blast and Synth, and actually just cutting like something like Core Skyfisher and Ica Wellspring to an extent, because you don't need Skyfisher to actually, as much as it slows the deck down, but if you want to keep that aggression, like you could easily just cut the Skyfisher, cut the Wellspring, and just run some Galv Blast and Synths and kind of get away with it. Like Glint Hawk and Deadly Dispute will be good enough for the experimental synthesizer engine. So it'd be interesting to see how this black-white list anyways generally develops, because there's definitely a lot of room, and Titan Blade is definitely a good way forward.
Yeah, sure. I think it will be interesting to see if it gets picked up. Obviously, we've seen that sort of influx when all the glitters got spoiled of like 3-color glitter decks, and then blue-white glitters basically just stabilized as that, right? That's the glitters deck, and nothing else really got played. But if we get sort of a mono-red situation where this black-white version, like blue-white's still good, and this black-white version just runs alongside it, I think that's pretty good overall.
Yeah, definitely. The more the merrier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that this top 10 or top 8 to be fair is like an absolute dream of a challenge to showcase week 1 of Ixalan, to be fair. Like you've got cards in there that probably you've got the obvious ones like the Titan Blade and the Tomb Raider. That obviously so, but you've got cards that you probably didn't expect to see week 1, like you've got Runaway Boulder from the Flickertron, and the Mephitic Draft, is it? From the
in Grixis Affinity.
In the Grixis Affinity.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good showing that there is cards that you don't expect to see week 1 showing up in a lot of good ways, and Runaway Boulder definitely seems to surprise a lot of people in the Flickertron. Like obviously it has a lot of utility in that deck that you just don't think about. Like searching for a Runaway Boulder with Mystical Teachings is just like that's pretty good going.
Or flickering it.
Or just cycling it if you think it's bad. To be fair, it's definitely got a lot of utility.
I think as you say, the 4 Lost Cabins of Ixalan, it's a pretty good showing. I think there's only the 2 blue-black decks that aren't playing any Ixalan cards. The Control and the Fae, from what I've seen. And there's obviously four different cards see and play across the top 8. Which is pretty great for a new set.
Yeah, I would say the only card that's kind of like not in the top 8 or the top 10 that I would expect is the card we mentioned earlier, that Fanatical off whatever it's called.
Fanatical Offering.
Yeah, but again, I think as you say, it probably has a place in Grixaphony, but unfortunately, I think bargains needed too much to fight the Red Menace, especially when there's
Yeah,
3 in the top 8, as you can see here.
yeah, I think you're probably right there. It's more of it's got a place in a slower meta. Like if the meta just goes completely control, obviously offering's better because you can utilize that treasure a lot more. You can get the value out of it.
Mm.
But if you still have got quite a bit of aggro, the life gain is pretty clutch, especially when you can eat Marine Forces and gain 7 and stuff like that. It's essentially like time walks.
Yeah, definitely. I guess the only other thing to note is obviously the blue-black control deck, the like blue-black mystic kind of deck. Like
Yeah, it's straight blue black control.
yeah, I've um, I've obviously mentioned like a mystic deck kind of doing quite well in random like leagues and things like that, and I expected it to transition a bit more into challenges a bit more, and obviously it's took I think 4 weeks, 5 weeks since mentioning it. But
Mm.
interestingly enough, it's got like kind of like turbo initiative vibes. It's got 4 dark rituals, which is pretty impressive. I'm just gonna turbo out a Thorn or a Murmuring Mystic and kind of go from
Yeah.
there. Definitely an interesting strategy, which definitely has worked out for Zero here. Obviously, top 8.
Yeah, I think it was always sort of that backup plan of that mono black turbo initiative deck was just like jam a Thorn as early as possible.
Yeah.
And as we are seeing, like the top 8, although there's mono red there filling the aggro role, a lot of it is pretty controlly at the moment with blue black Fane
Yeah.
and Colgates and Gardens and stuff like that. So
Definitely.
if you can just jam an early Thorn, like if you just turn 2 Thorn against Colgates on the play, like you're probably going to win that game.
Definitely. And let's not even mention turn 2 Thorn against like something like Gardens or Tron.
Oh yeah, especially if it's like the Campfire Gardens.
Yeah.
They're just never going to get through it.
They're not getting that. But yeah, definitely an interesting top 10 to be fair, and really excited, like a good showcase for the future of obviously Ixalan.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's sort of although we are seeing a lot of Ixalan cards, none of them are super broken. Like Tomb Raider's not better than Swift Spear. And then like Tide and Blade, although it's solid, like it's an edict, like it's a utilizable spell, but it can always just be played around. So it's good to see cards that aren't just miles above everything else,
Yeah.
but sort of pitched at the right level, I think.
I agree.
For the format.
Definitely, because it's a nice complexity as well. Like the night, obviously the Tomb Raider is not like a free Goblin guide. Do you know what I mean? It's not literally just a 1 mana red. It mostly
No, you can't just like play old school burn and put 4 in.
Exactly.
For example, yeah.
You do have to obviously there is some deck building requirements, albeit not that much, but there is obviously some sort of you can't just jam it in and it is a 2/2 haster kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's definitely sweet to see like all these cool new additions and not be absolutely broken.
Yeah, I think that downside is probably going to show more in like Pinger Burn. I imagine the numbers of Pinger Burn will just depreciate because they can't utilize this tool very well at all.
Definitely.
And it is something like if it was just Goblin Guide, like you'd obviously just put 4 in Pinger Burn and it would like power up that deck.
Yeah.
But it is a tool that particular burn deck misses out of.
Yeah, 100%. Anything you'd like to add?
No, nothing from me.
No, nothing from me. Do you want to move on to Sunday?
Yeah. Sunday the 19th. First place was Culled Off the Red. Second place was the Campfire Gardens, or the like low creature gardens, or whatever it's called. Third and fourth was a pair of Corgates. And then 5th through 8th, we had a pair of Mono Blue Terrors, another Corgate, and a Boros Weenie, I've called it.
It's like a Boros Gatesy kind of in it, but
yeah,
very weird, very strange deck. But
and then 9th and 10th was Breathless Gate and another copy of Corgate. I think my first comments on it is obviously it's less variety than Saturday. But if you actually look at it, it's still fairly solid. it's obviously a really good day for Colgates. There's quite a bias to Colgates in the top 10. But there is still a really good mixture of decks in there. I think the other question I had was, do you know if the finals was split?
I did see a note on this, and I did check the sheets for like that. Obviously, the grinders and stuff, but I could, and it wasn't filled out for that day,
Yeah.
so I couldn't tell you, to be honest. But I don't.
It was more of a just, if the finals was played out, it's not a good look for Campfire Gardens.
Yeah,
Essentially, the whole point of the deck is to not lose to aggro decks, and it gets beat by the aggro deck.
yeah, I find it.
And basically, the only aggro deck in the top 10, obviously, the Boros Gates as well. But
I find it interesting because looking at that list as well, it's like it's took a few of the cards that it utilized against Red out as well. So it cut a couple of bargains for 2 Fanatical offerings. And it doesn't run any Lembas, and it runs a Mephitic Draft and some Titan Blades instead. So like you've cut a lot. Like there's your like 3 of your life gain spells.
Yeah.
And it also runs an Avenging Hunter main, so I feel like this person is cheating. This is not Campfire Gardens.
Yeah, that was my other sort of thoughts on this. There's the 1 Thorn and the 1 Avenging Hunter in the creature package, which when I was naming it, I was like, well, I feel like it still is Campfire Gardens. It's super low on the creatures, but yeah, obviously not committing fully. I do wonder if the sort of, because they often play 3 Avenging Hunters in the sideboard, and this one's just got 2. I don't know if it was sort of a sideboard cut, like they wanted something else in the sideboard, but they didn't want to lose out on the Avenging Hunter.
Yeah, interesting. And gone full committed to the Crypt Rats as well. 4 Crypt Rats is a lot. But yeah, definitely it's nice to see that they're obviously utilising. I think this is like Gardens in general is probably the place that they'll utilise the offering the most, because it does have other forms of life gain.
Yeah.
Where like Grixis Affinity doesn't. So this is probably the most likely place you'll see Fanatical offering, and I do also like the draft. The the black Wellspring that they'll lose a life and draw a card.
What over Lembas?
Yeah, I just think I used to be really high on Lembas, and I just think the raw cards is just better in Wellspring, and even if you're losing 2 life, to draw the same amount of cards as well, you might as well. It's just generally just a better card, I think, overall.
Yeah, I think it just gets random like upsides as well of like being a black card, like your Spinning Darknesses. You can essentially play it, sack it to a dispute, and you're basically there on Spinning Darkness.
Yeah, definitely.
And just weird stuff like that as well. Obviously not as much in Gardens, but we were talking about obviously Mono Black last week.
I touched on this on my card review as well, that I think this card, as weird as it is, touching on the draft, is that as you say, being black might actually make Mono Black Devotion like actually have a good draw engine, as opposed to just I'm going to Phyrexian Rage and draw some cards.
Yeah.
Which is probably half the battle, to be fair, for Mono Black, because Mono Black Devotion has a lot of good tools because Gardens has access to them too. So it's just stuck with I need things on board. So with Titan Blade and this draft card
it's definitely a big increase in sticky permanents that give you black pips, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So hopefully we see some Mono Black Devotion challenges soon.
Yeah, I think as well, like, they occasionally played that 2-mana 1/1 that was like ETB, draw a card, lose a life as well, right?
The Zealot.
From original Ixalan.
Dusk Legion Zealot, I think it's called.
Yeah, and obviously this is just, if you're running a dispute engine, the draft's just infinitely better than that card.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, my only other sort of highlight on that was this Boros Gates deck, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's sort of like I don't really know how to describe it, really. It's sort of a white weenie creature package, but then with just some bolts and chain lightnings, and then a gate mana base.
Yeah, with some bitter reunions as well. Really strange.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting one. It's sort of a bit of card draw, but you can also just use it to, like, you play a guy, you Basilisk Gate your guy, and then you give your guy haste. Which I assume is sort of what it's there for.
Yeah. Interesting, definitely an interesting deck because it's obviously got synth as well, like 3 copies of experimental synthesizer to basically utilize with the core Skyfishes. So it's got some sort of card draw, or along with the usual white weenie card draw with like Rafine's Informant and Militia Bugler. Ugh. So definitely an interesting take on like a Boros Gates or a Boros white weenie kind of thing, because they're not even running um the white card, the Battle Screech
No,
as well. So it's like
no,
full
it's
blown.
all like the hard creature package.
Yeah, it's like a traditionally. It's weird. It's like a cross between like a traditional Boros deck kind of thing, like a Boros synth, but like with a white weenie creature pack. It's really strange. It's just an odd take on it, but it obviously works.
Yeah.
Um,
Obviously nice to just see different gate variants coming
mm,
back. I know we obviously mentioned it when Breathless Gates did well.
yeah,
Obviously, it's done well again this week. But yeah, there's 3 Gates decks in the top 10, and two, like they're not all the same.
mm,
Like there's 3 variants, sorry. Which is good to see because it sort of dropped off pretty hard, and just everyone just played core gates.
yeah. Interesting. There's no journeys.
No, no. Obviously,
Shows
you've got the
4
burn
bolts and the
of
2 chain
bolts and
lightnings.
chain lightnings, yeah, as your
Interesting.
removal.
Interesting take, to be fair, and really cool to see. I always like White Weenie or even Boros style decks. Core Skyfish and Experimental Synthesizer are up there with my favorite engines. So nice to see. I think the. Do I have anything to note? I cannot even. Oh, it was a pretty overall a pretty downer on the Ixalan cards, bar obviously first and second, i.e. the red and gardens.
Yeah,
But overall, I think it's been a good weekend because you very rarely see. I'd say you very rarely see this many cards week one. Like even for the likes of like Lord of the Rings sets, you basically see what Lorien or something like that for week one from
yeah. I
memory.
can't quite remember. There wasn't a lot from memory until week 2.
Mm, so it's definitely a good showing for week one for sure.
But yeah, I think even being down slightly outside the top 2 is probably a lot to do with the decks that did well as well. Like Mono Blue Terror didn't really gain anything. It didn't lose anything. Like there's nothing super good against it. I guess
Mm.
Tie them other than Tie them Blade. But it really didn't get any new tools. And the same with Colgate. Like the cards that you've done in your top 5 and stuff like
Mm.
that, they don't really go in
No,
these
they
two
don't know.
decks.
Definitely.
Um, so yeah, it was just obviously the burn deck and the gardens that ended up playing like excellent cards.
Yeah. It's like these are fairly obvious inclusions to them as well. So it's still nice that like the 3 mono red decks that we've seen in the top 8 on Saturday, obviously all running Tomb Raider, and like these are obviously obvious inclusions. So it's nice to just see these cards just going straight in as opposed to like I'm thinking the thing that springs to mind is the Falaji like archaeologist. When
Yeah,
when that got spoiled from his brother's war, there was like this kind of like battle between all the Demir Terror players at the time. They were like some were still on Augur, some were still on
yeah,
Falaji, and it was like where basically all these red players have basically just shook hands and went, yes, we're all running Tomb Raider.
yeah.
Nobody's playing Ping Burn. It's like, okay.
It was an odd one as well because when it got spoiled, I was like, oh, so they've just reprinted Goblin Guide as a
Mm.
common. This is going to go in everything. And then I seen a load of takes just being like, oh no, this is not actually that good. I was like,
Mm.
really, really.
Goblin Guide's bad, obviously.
I mean, it's worse than Swift Spear, but Swift Spear is too good for the format. So is
Yeah.
that really a post you want to measure off? But yeah, it's obviously a great week for Lost Caverns
Mm.
and some cool and interesting cards making it the top 8. Not just the ones we expected, but like the Boulder and stuff like
Yeah.
that in Tron.
The Boulder was I expected Boulder to be like probably tested in leagues, and I really
Mm.
didn't like. I was really like I thought the card was good in Tron, and one deck like was like Monster Tron that really struck out to me. I was like, it's probably good in there, and I expected someone to try it in like Flicker, but I didn't expect it to be like, here's week one. I've ran 2 boulders. This card is awesome. I was
Do you remember what your top 5 was from your video? I'm
oh
feeling like we might have seen we've definitely seen 4 of them, right? With Mephitic Draft, Fanatical Offer, and Titan Blade, and Goblin Tomb Raider.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that's I can't remember what your 5th was. I don't know if it's something we've been missing.
I can't actually remember. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think
It
it might have
wasn't
been.
It wasn't Boulder though.
I may be able to tell you. Oh, wait, it might open up over your screen, so I actually won't be able to tell you.
Yeah, it's
Um,
all right. I was interested to see if we'd seen the top 5.
I think it might have been like Tinker's Taught or something, but that
All
might have
right,
been
okay.
that might have been an honourable mention. Not really sure. Yeah, but yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of them for sure. And we've definitely seen, like, obviously the card review. I highlighted a lot of cards, that Boulder being one of them that I think might have got there.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised it's definitely got there week 1. It'd be interesting to see if it's a staple moving forward, because I know when Hyson plays a deck, like he played Jeskai Ephemerate with like 4 Casting the Fires. Week later, everyone just sacked that idea off and carried on with normal Jeskai Ephemerate. So he might have played it, done really well, and then everyone carries on with stock Flickertron, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a very testing number as well, as
Hmm.
like to be on 2.
Hmm.
It's like not the confident this is broken, and it's not the sort of I'll just try one. It's like, right, I'm gonna put 2 in, so I draw it and I can tutor for it, so I
Yeah.
know if it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. It might take off. Obviously, it's very peculiar to see Flickertron up there anyway.
Hmm.
Um, but you never know.
You never know, indeed. Um, yeah, but sweet overall Saturday, Sunday, sweet challenges. Definitely also got to touch on, I guess, Breathless Gates. Nice to see that make a resurgence.
Yeah.
Not even with Kirby either. Is another pilot. So
Mm.
definitely sweet. Someone else is trying it and doing well. Deck's surprisingly strong, I guess. Gates, OP. Would you
Do you want to
like to
move
move
on
on?
to? Yeah,
Jinx.
yeah.
Um,
Uh,
Paupergeddon.
you want me to do the full top 16 or just the top 8?
Nah, top 16 sounds good to me.
Yeah. So, Paupergeddon results. First place was Jeskai Glitters.
Woo!
Second place was a Classic Gardens. Third and fourth was Classic Gardens and Blue Black Fair. And then 5th through 8th was Mono Red One Drops, another Classic Gardens, and then a pair of Familiars. And then 9th through 16th was 3 Colgates in 9th, 10th, and 11th. Kuldotha in 12th, Blue Black Fae in 13th, Grixis Affinity in 14th, Boros Synth in 15th, and another copy of Kuldotha in 16th.
Yeah.
I think the first thing from me is just a big congratulations to both the organisers and the players who did really well. I think there was it 502 or something like that players, over 500 players
I
anyway
will double
in the
check the day
event.
one. Day one, 520 players.
There you go. Which is huge for Pauper. Obviously, it's getting up there to like GP numbers. Or GPs of old. I'm not even sure what they're called now. What a GP's called nowadays.
Is the GPs now? I have no idea.
Yeah. And yeah, obviously really good to see. I think for me now, like a benefit for the player base would be if they maybe announced stuff a bit further in advance to open it up, because there's a lot of people that will travel to 500 plus player Pauper events.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, it's all going to be in Italy. Like that's not a massive issue. It's pretty easy to travel from most places in Europe. But yeah, if there's a venue or a date announced, or venue and date ideally announced a bit further in advance, I imagine this event will just grow even further.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've noticed for the last couple is they've definitely been more accommodating towards non-Italian players. Like the last one and this one was announced a lot sooner than they previously have.
Yeah.
But it's still obviously it's not soon enough for a lot of players. Obviously, it is quite still short notice. They do have like a general rule of thumb, like roughly where they're gonna be in rough timescales. Obviously, that's not.
Yeah.
But for
you can't really book to that.
No, you can't. And unfortunately, I think problem. I think the thing is, it seems that there's a lot of like venue-y sort of sponsor kind of issues. That's why they end up being late.
Right.
Because I do know they usually have. Um, it's February, March. It's like usually in Milan. But I think
Mm.
from memory, I think this year was in like Lecco or something like that, and it's like an hour away from Milan because obviously it wasn't in Milan.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there must be something to do with. I'm guessing that this is all um, theory. Like I don't actually
Conjecture.
conjecture. That's a good word. I actually have, but yeah, I do agree with you. Like having them known 6-8 months in advance is obviously great for anyone. Like obviously like
Yeah, yeah.
GP
I
levels
think
kind of
obviously,
nuts.
given they are getting this big, and I imagine they still want them to grow,
Mm.
the biggest things that made GPs easy to attend is at the start of the year, they just produced a big list. Is this is where we're at on this date
Yeah,
for this event, and you were just like, right, I want to go to that one, this one, that one. Then you could just like plan stuff pretty easily.
yeah,
Um, if we can get at that level with Paupergeddon, obviously it'll be insane.
yeah.
And I imagine the numbers will grow to sort of reflect that.
Yeah, I think even if they do, like, even if they say, like, as you say, start of the year, because roughly you can kind of get the pattern. Obviously, usually February, March is this, June, July is this, October, November is this. Like, even if they at the start of the year say, look, this is the weekend we're gonna have the February, March one. It's March the 15th or whatever. Even if they don't have a venue, just put to be confirmed. At least you can then book the dates, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you like, even if say it is like I say, even if it is Rome or Milan, sorry, and it turns out to be in Lecco or somewhere like that's only an hour's train journey away. Like if you stay in Rome and get a train, like that's not bad for nothing. Do you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world.
Assuming there is a train.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like for example, it's like it's not the end of the world as long as at the start
Yeah,
of the year they can kind of give some forward notice. Definitely.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, they're obviously huge. No questions about that. Like they're doing really well, and they definitely seem in the past couple, and with the whole Paupergeddon expanding to outside of Italy with
Mm.
the whole leagues and things, they're obviously considering non-Italian player base, so only can go up from here, I guess.
That's what we need. Just replace GPs with just pauper events.
That'll do me.
But yeah, so outside of the organisation,
Yeah.
and how many people went, things like that, the top 16 is again a pretty good example of the diversity in pauper right now.
Mm.
I think there's 8 different archetypes within it, and even two out of the 3 red decks are basically different decks as well.
Mm.
So yeah, it's really nice to see. I think some of the things I took away from this is that control is obviously really good at the moment.
Yeah.
We've seen that through the challenges, and it's translated into paper here with decks like Gardens and Colgate's doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
Tomb Raider is obviously a legit card for Mono Red, if you hadn't already guessed. All 3 of these decks played it, and all of the decks in the challenges we've just looked at played it as well. And the Mer Enforcer decks, or the Mer Enforcer sort of slice of Pauper, is definitely not set in stone. Obviously we had the Black White Glitters deck in the
Mm-hmm.
challenge. We've got a Jeskai Glitters deck here, and we've had Grixis Affinity in the challenge and in here.
Yeah.
So that slice is a lot more open. Obviously, it used to be essentially just Grixis Affinity.
Mm.
And then when we got the Glitters reprint, it sort of expanded to Blue White Glitters and Grixis Affinity. But there definitely seems to be a lot more room in that Glitters deck.
Yeah. But
And
even for a
Glitters list.
while, I would argue that it was Grixis Affinity for a long time, and then when Glitters came, there was like Grixis Affinity never got a look in. It
Yeah.
was just all
To be
Glitters,
fair, yeah,
and
it
then it
maybe just
opened
went
up
to
back.
Blue White Glitters.
And then it took a while for a lot of the Grixis Affinity players to adapt, and obviously all that sort of stuff. And now it's, I'd say, definitely agreed. Like, there's no set in stone list for Mer Enforcer. 100%. I think it's a mix of both things of people unexploring as well. With like the glitters list, like Jeskai Glitters, sorry, has got no new toys. Like none of it's really
No.
new.
No.
It's all, but it's just people have obviously tested and trialed, and the list is very. It's very similar. It's set on a core of, I would say, blue white glitters to an extent, But yeah, it's nothing new, and people have obviously been exploring. And then with the addition of new cards with Tithe and Blade, like obviously that's opened up Grixis Symphony even more. So hopefully people keep tuning them.
Yeah, I think looking at the Jeskai deck, to start with, I think it is very obvious, like with the numbers that it has been played about with. Obviously, there's a lot of 4-ofs, but then you're like only 3s for Raven Inspectors and like a 1-off Core Skyfisher.
Yeah.
And then same with the lands, just a singleton Seat of Synod, and a singleton Silver Bluff Bridge. To sort of, it's very obvious that it's been tweaked about.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's probably to cope with the slightly wild sideboard of 12 white cards and 3
Yes.
relics. When normally like they obviously don't run that much white. They have the one pip guys and then maybe dust to dust in the sideboard.
But the mix of obviously this list and the black white list over the weekend really does obviously challenge the way Glitter's decks are built, and they can easily look at splashing a third colour like Esper did, but a lot smoother. Because as I've seen with like Mog's Esper list, it was very clunky. I don't know about yourself when playing it. It's very, because the numbers are just, okay, if I put 4 Mistvault bridges in, it's okay, it's going to work out. Where you can see this list's been heavily tested, heavily reliant on like Springleaf Drum and all sorts of that sort of thing, kind of, and it just feels like you can definitely challenge the standard blue-white glitters deck.
Yeah. I think, particularly the original take on the Esper glitters, you would basically just plain black for Blood Fountain.
Yeah.
Which it was fine, but it definitely felt sort of not worth it on the mana base front. Hence why blue-white glitters essentially just took over.
Yeah.
But now you've like the black has got so many more tools with like Tithe and Blade and stuff like that. That it sort of makes it more worthwhile looking at again. And then this Jeskai deck, it's one that it was there from the start, but just didn't really get the traction. But this really good result obviously may swing that back to people looking at it again.
Yeah, because I think the thing that I find interesting is I tested like a Jeskai Glitters deck when it first came out, but it was very much Boros splashing like, I can't remember, like Thoughtcast basically.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And the thing that's kind of stuck out to me here is you basically as soon as you put Experimental Synthesizer in Artifact deck, you instantly go 4 Glitterhawks, 4 Skyfishers, and that's kind of the automatic assumption. But what you can show us by this deck is it's looked at it and it's went, well, Experimental Synthesizer is a great card in its own. Glitterhawk's a powerful card and you've got a lot of use for it in this deck.
Yeah.
So why do I need Core Skyfisher? It's there as if it goes long, but I don't want to see it really, and that's kind of, you can tell that's been tested thoroughly with the one copy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of another thing that I was kind of leaning to with that black-white deck that Mog ran on the Saturday, that you could probably easily get away with not running a Skyfisher, maybe even just jam Galv Blast and Experimental Synthesizer in that black-white deck and just kind of roll with it from there. So that might be an interesting to see how people develop these glitter decks now we've kind of challenged the norm. But pretty cool deck overall.
You want to look at the second place Gardens list as well, because that was quite different to what we've been seeing. Quite a lot of new cards in it.
Yeah, so just touched on this. Obviously, the creature package I would say is fairly stock. It's got 3 Crypt Rats, 3 Thorns, 3 Avenger Hunters, and 3 Trolls. I guess the third copy of Thorn and the third copy of Troll is probably what I would say was slightly out of norm. Like, some do run 3 of each, but it's not like, I wouldn't say it's standard. The main interesting thing that I would like to know is all 3 Gardens lists were Defile Gardens. Like, they ran like basically swamp mana base to run Defile in some numbers, usually like 3 to 4. But the second place one was running 4 Tithe and Blade as well, and 0 Chainers. Yeah. Along with, is it 9 copies of like Deadly Dispute effects?
Yeah. With 3 being the new one.
Yeah, so 4 Deadly Disputes, 3 Fanatical Offerings, and then 2 Bargains. So it's kind of what we touched on with the Grixis Affinity. Like obviously this pilot obviously came to the conclusion that they still need the bargain for the life gain. Like life gain is crucial, obviously surviving against the red decks. But the whole chaining your Deadly Disputes and your Fanatical Offerings is just key for this deck. You just need a handful of cards at all times, and being able to go Deadly Dispute into Fanatical Offering into Deadly Dispute, like that chain ending with Bargain was such a beating when you just have a bunch of mana and it's just end of turn. I'll draw, or crap, I can't because I've got no artifacts left.
Yeah.
Especially in the Defile lists. And I guess the final thing to note is the choice of artifacts. They went 1 Blood Fountain, which is kind of normal now. Like most of them have cut down because it's a bit slow. But they've chose to go 3 Lembas and 2 Ichor Wellsprings. Which I'm assuming is obviously just a nod to help against red, because the Tithe and Blade's there, so you don't really need... You have a lot of fodder now. So your Fanatical Offerings obviously producing artifacts. Your Chainer's Edict is now an artifact.
Yeah.
So you're kind of not... You're less reliant on the Wellspring as such, but obviously it's still strong. So is an interesting one overall. No Snuff Outs as well, which I guess with Defile is generally getting kind of more normal, but again, not out the blue.
Yeah, obviously it's pretty maxed on Defiles, Cast Downs, and then the 4 Tithe and Blades as well.
Yeah.
Along with 2 Spinning Darkness, so you are pretty stacked on removal anyway. I think, yeah, like you say, there's sort of some amount of slots where you like cut a Defile or you cut an Edict effect or something to try and fit a couple of Snuff Outs in, but yeah, I like it. It's a cool take on the Gardens list.
Yeah, I really do like it, and it looks very well thought out. And I'm happy it obviously has done so well for obviously Los Tommaso, I'm going to say. Not really an Italian speaker, but very good list.
Good attempt.
Yeah. Interesting. I would like to know how the third copy of Thorn played out. I'm guessing they expected a lot of Fae. I could think, or obviously just a lot of control in general, I guess, maybe.
Or a lot of Gardens. Obviously, it's pretty good if you've got more Thorns than they have. Especially with all the removal. Like if they're cutting not cast downs, Snuff Outs. Like all your removal now hits the opposing Gardens creatures.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty good place to be.
Yeah. I have been a fan of the Defile list. I played it at Leeds. So I am a big fan of the Defile list, and obviously I can't wait to try these new cards.
Yeah.
Definitely helps. But sweet, it was a sweet deck, and sweet to see it play out in the finals. I guess touching on this before I forget, the final match, because it went to game 3. For obviously the Glitters player won. The Gardens player tapped down low, and then the Glitters. Something, I can't remember the Glitters, but the Glitters something put them down to like 5 pretty early. Like I think the turn was like the turn 2 was nuts. It was like turn 2 Mer Enforcer or something stupid. It was like literally like triple Frogmite into Mer Enforcer, and then the Glitters something put them down to 5 really early on. They kind of killed the Glitters thing and then like had Drowning Sorrow. All that sort of, basically they got them down low. It was very back and forth with a lot of removal. They swung, put them to 1, and then the Glitters player I think had 1 card in hand, untapped, drew, and ripped a Gingerbrute for the win. It was like you could see the Gardens player just trying to stabilize after top decking a Drowning Sorrow, and then they just untapped Gingerbrute for the win. It was like, well, it was pretty good.
There's 4 in there for a reason.
Yeah. I just so wish it was a Galv Blast though, because obviously it's effectively like a blue-white Glitters list splashing Galv Blast, and it would have just been so much better, like icing on the cake, if it was like
if the red mattered.
Yeah, the red mattered.
Yeah.
But ended up not. But yeah, it was pretty cool to see. It was like, oh no, the Gardens. I was obviously rooting for the Gardens player initially, and it was like, oh my god, he's stabilized, he's on 1. Gingerbrute. Yeah. I guess we've kind of touched on basically everything. I guess the only thing to touch on, I guess, is what has obviously happened in general other Paupergeddons that people, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but like the last two, there's always a combo deck that seems to do really well that doesn't function generally well on Magic Online. Like the last two times it was Ultratron, same pilot last time, but obviously now we've got 2 copies of Familiars in the
Yeah.
top 8. Obviously it's a deck that's pretty hard to play on Magic Online. One of them being Adapter as well, which ran, I think he ran stickers in his deck just to present stickers the entire time, which is a pretty mental. No sticker cards, like no sticker producing cards, but had a sticker board anyways.
Yeah, it's pretty cringe, I'm not gonna lie.
Hey, that command performance, you got to play around it, haven't you?
Yeah, from what I've seen, there's sort of nothing particularly different about these. Are they even? They might even be the exact same list, are they?
Yeah, I think so.
I know there's like one's got 3 more drifters, one's got 4.
Wow.
But yeah, they're very, very similar lists.
Hmm.
I think one's playing a couple of preordains. Yeah, but yeah, nothing new. Obviously, just Familiars is a really strong deck that does struggle on Magic Online if you're not extremely proficient with it.
Yeah.
And extremely proficient with Magic Online.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. It's obviously the winner of the combo decks from Paupergeddon this time.
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically it. That's all I've really got. I guess the only other thing to shout out is obviously Truffaz. GM Truffaz, he came 3rd with the Classic Gardens. He's the French player who won like 3 of the last 4 French nationals with Gardens, and I think top 8 the last Paupergeddon with Gardens. He was the guy that put Avenging Hunter in Gardens originally.
Pretty cool too.
Yeah, so it's nice to see that he knows his stuff. But clearly not the Gardens winner this time.
Do you want to go on to your shout outs?
Yeah, I guess so. So again, I probably touched on a lot of these, but shout out obviously Mogged for the new take on glitters. It's always nice to see if any man is just developing a deck and just making a tear with it, it's Mogged or Bako really in it. So shout out to him. And again, shout out to Adapto for the top 8 of Paupergeddon with FAMs. And I think that's kind of it. I've obviously shouted out Truffaz again, so congrats to those. Oh, I guess congrats to Hyson as well for not only A, running Runaway Boulder, but B, obviously top 8 of challenge. Keep repping the PFP, keep doing a good work. And yeah, sound?
Hot takes from last week?
Sounds good to me.
So my first one from last week, it was that we will get an update from the PFP after Ixalan, but before the next set. Obviously nothing yet, but we'll pin this and review it, and hopefully it'll come true before the next set comes out.
Hopefully. So
hopefully,
my obviously we are just counting challenges when we are talking about these generally, but so I wrote Crit Rats decks will make an upward tick in recent success of obviously Kirby and Gardens this weekend. So that didn't happen on Magic Online, but obviously did in Paupergeddon because there was 3 in the top 8. I guess this to me more showcases the fact that even though we are only talking about challenges in general, at least we sort of know what we're talking about, right?
There was one obviously on the Sunday came second, but yeah, not a huge amount, but obviously the double, well the second and third wasn't it from Paupergeddon and fifth, sixth.
So yeah, definitely Crit Rat decks are very well positioned at the moment. Mainly Gardens, obviously, but hopefully carries on going upwards.
Unless that finals of the challenge was played out and Mono-Red is actually just really good against Campfire Gardens.
That also could be the case.
My second one from last week was that we will see a rise in non-blue decks in the top 8s. Yeah, we have seen we've gone up to 3, I think, each day. From I think we had 2 or 1 each day last week. And obviously there's a fair few in the Paupergeddon top 8 as well, with the 3 copies of Gardens and the Mono-Red. So yeah, it's a good time to be non-blue as well as being blue.
Even go to the extent of one deck that originally ran blue, cut blue and ran black instead.
Yeah.
As well. So also something to look at. That's how good it is to not run blue. My last one is Initiative will make a return this weekend in like the top 16. There was one Avenging Hunter, obviously, in like that Campfire Gardens, but there was no real, from memory, there was no real like Ponza, or there definitely wasn't any Black White Ephemera for sure, but there's no real Ponza. From
No,
memory.
and the Boros deck on the Sunday wasn't even Boros Initiative. It was
Yeah.
the Boros Weenie. There was a Boros Initiative, I think, in 9th place on the Saturday.
Yeah.
So that was pretty close. But yeah, in the top 8, there was just the one copy of Avenging Hunter
Mm.
in the main anyway.
So yeah, they were the hot takes from last week.
So yeah, our hot takes for next week. My first one is a pretty obvious one. Is that Mono Red pilots will figure out which list is the best one to be on. Obviously, the pretty split at the moment between like regular Cold Author, Mono Red 1-drops, and the sticker version. I don't know how long this will take. It usually takes obviously a lot longer than we expect putting these hot takes out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in the next few weeks it'll sort of stabilize. I think especially in paper, it'll come a bit clearer. I think the sticker deck on Magic Online in particular, because the sticker card is so much better than it is in paper, makes things a bit odd because the format doesn't really translate very well between, or that deck in particular doesn't translate very well between Magic Online and paper because it's just worse in paper.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll establish some form of, is it 1-drops, is it Cold Author?
Yeah, I'm really unsure which side of the fence I would be on with that. Obviously, I don't really play Mono Red very often anyways, but I have no idea which side of the fence I'll be on. Interesting. Well, let the actual people who play Mono Red figure that out. But yeah, looking forward to seeing how that turns out. My next hot take is the Rising Glitters or Mirror Enforcer decks, with the success of obviously the Black White Glitters deck and the Jeskai deck from the Paupergeddon. Yeah, we'll just keep seeing a rise and obviously a different kind of take on that. I think more than the blue white, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think Grixis Affinity obviously as well. With the new tools that they've got, obviously the new Deadly Dispute and the Edict, and even to some extent that Mephitic Draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely see a lot of development in the Mirror Enforcer sort of space.
Yeah, 100%.
And then my last one for this week was that we'll get a combo deck in one of the next week's top 8. Because we didn't have one. Obviously, there was some in Paupergeddon with FAMs. But yeah, none in either challenge. I'm not even sure where the closest one was either. I'll let you read your take while I scroll down.
Just out of curiosity, like obviously I'm not gonna hold you to this, but if you were to guess what combo deck it would be, what would you put it at? What's the first one that sticks to your head?
Probably Walls.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing. Probably Walls.
But also FAMs can get there. Obviously, we've seen it do well in Paupergeddon in a very similar meta to what we are seeing on Magic Online at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, FAMs or Walls will probably be my lead. I don't think it'll be something like super combo. Like I don't think it's going to be like a Cycle Storm or anything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're the two I would probably go with.
I would think I would probably Walls is one of the first things that came to my mind.
Yeah.
But
from a very brief scrolling, I don't think there was a combo deck in either top 32. So that's not a good sign for that deck.
It's all right. Metas can change instantly. My last one is, with the success of the more traditional gardens, we will see at least 3 copies between both top 10s next week. So obviously we've seen a little bit of Campfire Gardens on Magic Online and, appearing here and there. As much as it is fine, I think people obviously, with the look of obviously Paupergeddon, realise the Avenging Hunter is still the go-to for Gardens list. It just ends the game quickly when needed and all that sort of stuff. I just think we'll probably see a rise in that.
I think especially on Magic Online as well, it's a lot easier sell than to just sit there clicking away on a campfire for hours and hours on end
Yeah.
and being super tight on your time because you've got basically no income.
Yep. I agree. But we can see. But I think we will see like a proper rise in gardens next week, and I think 3 copies will probably be in top 10s, and I think it'll be more likely traditional.
Sweet.
Would you like to add anything else?
No, that's all from me.
So, guys, thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Obviously, please do not forget to share this with your Pauper community, your friends, your family, your priest, your pediatrician. I don't know, your midwife. That seems very relevant right now. Share it with anyone. I don't care. But it is obviously been a really enjoyable episode as well, talking Paupergeddon. So if you have enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to give us a follow on Spotify or even a subscribe and like on YouTube. And that is all from us at Casting Commons. Until next time, don't forget to stay hydrated and also get some sleep. Highly recommend. Bye.
See ya.